Good morning. I want to welcome the public back to the Search Committee public interview of candidates for the Chief of Police for the Pensacola Police Department, the City of Pensacola. All Search Committee members are present, as is Mayor Robinson. I want to welcome our third and final candidate of the day, John Ortolano, the Chief of Police for the City of Hobbs, New Mexico. Welcome, Chief.
Thank you, Gary.
Chief, I was just going to say before we start, thank you very much for being a part of this process. We really appreciate you coming. I thought the event last night was everything we could have wanted it to be to show how impressive this group of candidates is that we have in front of us. All of you can equally do the job. Our challenge today is finding the right one that fits for us. So we appreciate you being a part of that process, and this is not an easy job for us at all. So I'll turn it over to Gary and we can ask the questions.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, Chief. First question, how would you increase employee engagement and officer retention?
Excellent question. I inherited a police department in Hobbs that had horrible retention problems. It was a training agency, and people were going other places. Turnover was through the roof. I came in as a change agent, and things that I did is immediately increased communication with the employees. There was a lack of communication between upper management and the employees, and they felt engaged because I was including them in what I was doing on a daily basis and what the PD was doing on a daily basis. Another thing I did is whenever I get an attaboy from the public or from another police officer or an outside agency, I handwrite a note to the employee, and I include a challenge coin, and I back it up with an email to the employee. I basically triple reinforce the good behavior, and we make sure that there's a positive file entry in the employee to reinforce that good behavior. The other thing I've done is create a pathway for their career. It was told to me right when I became a chief that promotional processes were already determined before they even happened, so people didn't even want to bother applying. And I created transparency in the process, and one of the things I did is I even included a union member to sit as a bystander to observe any irregularities that they believe may have been taking place in the promotional process. I did that for every level of promotion, including for deputy chief. Because a lot of times deputy chief selection processes are kind of secretive and hidden, or it's the chief's buddy that gets hired. And by making some minor changes like that, we had a sergeant promotional process where we had the most people apply for it, because people told me, they said, this is the first time that, you know, we think we have a chance, but we believe it's not predetermined. And the accountability in the agency has been increased. We strive to do the right thing at all times, and that's the biggest thing we do. And the retention aspect here, I've done my research, and I see that, you know, Pensacola has had a high turnover and compared to comparable agencies, and we need to decrease that. There have been some discussions that the pay here may be one of the issues. I understand that the elected officials, including the mayor, you inherited a problem that perhaps we can work on finding an equitable solution to increase employee retention and make this the gold standard where people want to come to work.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, the second question, let me preface it with, we all have biases.
Yes.
How do you confront and work around yours?
Oh, great question. One of the things is, no matter what it is, we all form a bias. It's actually called schemas. Like when I walked into the room here, I didn't have to identify where a chair was to sit down. Based on my training and life experiences, I know that, you know, this thing resembles a chair based on growing up in life. And because of the schemas that I created, it allows your brain not to have to think through every single thing. Because if my brain didn't create this schema, I could have came in here and maybe sat on the table or something. And if I would have sat on the table, y'all would have looked at me and said, thanks for playing, John, next candidate, please, right? But once we have this schema and we say, okay, this is a chair, we start putting attributes to it, you know, good or bad. Because I think we've all been in a lot of chairs in our life. We go into conferences and whatnot, and we'll try and find the chairs we like to sit in, right? And we do that, unfortunately, with people as well. Based on our life experiences, we form opinions on people based on our life experiences. And in policing right now, you know, a lot of times when I hear people talk about this topic, we want to dance around the questions. And the problem in policing is in some communities there are some perceived problems, and in some communities there are real problems between the police and the community. And one of the things that I did when I first came to Hobbs, because there were some tensions between the police department and certain ethnicities, I asked the cops, I said, go out and find people that don't look like you and talk to them. And some of the cops were like, Chief's lost his mind. I'm like, no, do it. Please do it, because they're unconsciously changing the biases that they have, because what they're doing is they're going to find that 99% of the people they go out and talk to at random are really good people. So they start changing their unconscious biases towards these people. And in policing right now, there are problems between certain ethnicities in the police. And the more we can get the police to interact with the community, the more we can overcome these unconscious biases that people have. And that's what I teach people to do. And you know, if I could have avoided talking about ethnicity and just said, you know, started talking about chairs, but police aren't having problems shooting chairs, right? We have problems in the community where people are getting shot a lot of times because we don't understand each other. And that's what I talk about, and that's what I teach people.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, the next question is going to require a little bit of an assumption. So, assuming you've been selected as the Chief of Police and 1 year has passed, tell us what you've accomplished in terms of community relationships and relationships within the department, and how did you get there?
Great question. Once again, I'll rely on my chief experience. This is exactly what I did when I got to Hobbs. I had a chief friend of mine when I was growing up through the ranks, and he told me, he says, when you immediately, if he knew I was going to be a chief someday, he could see it in me, and he knew I eventually wanted to be a chief of police. He says, you have to reach out and grasp the community as immediately as possible. He said, because the minute that you can grab the community, he says they will love you and they will love the police department. And he says, trust me. He said, I didn't do it the right way. And so when I became a chief, I reached out immediately to elected officials. I said, who do you think I should talk to? I reached out to informal community leaders, whether it be through Rotary, through Veterans of Foreign War, other groups that I belong to. I just started talking to the leaders of that. I went to clergy leaders. And one of the best things that I did too is walking around the community with elected officials, going door to door with them, talking about them. And some of them were shocked seeing the chief of police at their door. And it was great to get direct feedback from them. And I share this experience with a lot of people. You just never know when you're going to come across a moment that you always remember. We went through probably the most economically depressed area where I'm a police chief, and I'm walking around with my deputy chief, and I'm just talking with people. And the last person I went to talk to, we were there maybe 2.5 hours. He's a young African-American gentleman. He's in the mid-20s. And I'm talking to him for a few minutes, and he stops me after a few minutes, and he goes, wait a minute. He goes, who are you again? I said, I'm a chief of police. And I explained it to him again. And he goes, what impresses me, number one, he goes, you're out here talking to us. He says, but what impresses me even more, he says, when you came up to me, he says, you came up to me not in the manner that I'm accustomed to. You didn't come up to me, what are you doing? When you came up to me, it was, how are you doing? And he said, that doesn't happen around here. And he says, I'm glad that you're here and you're changing things. And he had to take off and go to a job interview. I wish I knew what happened to him getting a job or not. But those are the impactful things that I share with the police officers to show them how you can make a difference in the community. But in the police department, and you talk to police officers, a lot of police officers think the problems are going on out in the street. Most of the stress we create is inside the station house. I try to create a work environment that people don't need a vacation from. I want them to be able to come to work. I want them to feel proud of what they're doing. And these are simple things. I do a weekly email to the employees that they love. And these may seem like minor things that I've done, but people that have left the agency have come back. And to date, as of today, not a single police officer has left the agency to go to another police agency. Prior to my arrival, that was commonplace to happen. So I look at my track record of actual accomplishments and not unknown promises with question marks. And that's what I would do.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, the fourth and final question before you meet with the mayor is, how do you create a culture of accountability?
I was chief for about 3 weeks, and I was walking through the squad room one day, and I just happened to come around the corner, and I see a police officer probably about 30 feet from another police officer, and they're kind of jokingly engaging each other, and the one had his taser out, and he's taking the lasers on it, and he's shining the lasers on them, and I had a decision to make. I could have done one of two things. I could have walked by and done nothing and reported it to a supervisor and said, hey, but there are other people in the squad room. And I immediately stopped. I confronted the employee. I said, you weren't trained to use that tool that way. I explained the quick dangers that it could occur. I said, but more importantly, you're a senior officer, and what type of message does it send to the junior officers that are in the room? I said, you know better, don't ever do that again. And everyone in the room got really big-eyed. I walked to my office. About 2 minutes later, a very sheepish officer entered my office and began to apologize incessantly. And that's the culture of what you permit, you promote. I didn't permit that bad behavior to go unnoticed. And he understood that that needed to be immediately corrected by me, and I did it. And guess what? We don't have people playing with their tasers in the squad room anymore. But more importantly, with the accountability, creating the entire agency norm is you give people expectations of behavior. Let them know this is what's expected from you. Let them know if they deviate from what's expected from them. Tell them how they can get in compliance with what's expected from them, and do follow up with them. But more importantly, give them positive feedback when they're doing the right things for the right reasons. And that's the big thing that I do is those key words, what you permit, what you promote, and you clear it up right away. Don't ignore it, and the problems start going away.
Thank you, Chief. So at this point, we're going to take a break, and Chief Ortolano is going to meet with Mayor Robinson privately. I want to remind the public that the search committee will meet back here with Mayor Robinson for a discussion at noon. Thank you.